Well, large corporations have some of the same problems. They still have sub-organizations within the corporation who may have competing interests. But DoD is at a scale that's hard to understand even at the large corporate level. DoD is bigger than the big three car makers combined, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, for example. And you have agencies and services within the Department of Defense who themselves have multi-billion-dollar budgets.
Wow.
And so you get those groups together, and they're all going to often have their own priorities and own things they're pursuing, and they don't want to be derailed from those goals. I know in a couple of cases, one of the common things we would do in our data standardization program is we would invite representatives from the services and agencies to a collaboration meeting where we're going to talk about, for example, maybe logistics data. And logistics in the Department of Defense is the need to get equipment and supplies in the right place at the right time, along with the people, of course. And that's a pretty complicated process a lot of times when you're working with hundreds of thousands of soldiers and a big operation. In any case, we might have 30 representatives come to a meeting in D.C. who work in logistics, and they work in logistics for the Army, or logistics for the Navy, or logistics for some other organization. And you get them all in a room, and you'd have a plan to have them work together to define common or standard data for logistics. Well, of course, they're all interested in having that standard data as long as you standardize on their data. They don't want to have to change their stuff. And of course, they'll come up with all kinds of reasons why they shouldn't. It'll cost us millions of dollars to make these changes and those kinds of things. Well, on a couple of occasions, we got those groups together, and you'd start trying to talk about how you're going to approach the issues and the kinds of data you're going to talk about. And the disagreements would get so hot that before 1 hour, and this is going to be like a 3-day meeting, before an hour is gone on the first day, half of them get up and walk out. So those are some of the kinds of things you end up dealing with. And it varied from group to group, but sometimes you ran into challenges like that. I worked for a while as DISA, or Defense Information Systems Agency's representative or facilitator for what we call the MITOC group. MITOC is Meteorology and Oceanography. So these are guys that do weather and oceanography. And the Department of Defense has many and big organizations that do those things. Anytime that you're going to have an operation somewhere in the world, they need to know what the weather's going to be like and what all kinds of details related to the shoreline of a country and the ocean and weather factors. In any case, so we would have people from all over the country get together several times a year and work on defining the data that they would use in meteorology and oceanography for the department. That was a relatively successful group. They had a fairly discreetly bounded kind of information. In other words, most of it was scientific type information or data, and they didn't have to worry too much about interoperating with people outside of that relatively narrow field. And they were a pretty cooperative bunch, and so they worked pretty effectively.
Okay. All right. Last of all, what general guidance do you have for IT professionals entering that field of work on graduation?
Well, the best time for advice would be when you're getting into it, I would think. But in any case, I guess what I would like to say is probably just do your best to define in as much detail as you can the kinds of things you enjoy doing. Maybe you'd rather just sit at a desk by yourself and write programs. Or maybe you'd rather be someone that talks with people and coordinates their efforts and is a leader of organizations. Maybe you'd like to work with networks or databases or hardware. But I mean, there's just a huge variety of kinds of work in the IT field generally. And so do your best to define what it is that you like doing, and then find a field within the IT world, if that's the area you're going toward, that suits your talents and interests and aptitudes and what you enjoy doing, because there's bound to be something that will. And you often mix areas of specialty with IT. In other words, these meteorology fellows that I worked with knew a lot about meteorology, but they also had to know quite a bit about information technology. And so you can kind of have blended fields many times if you have an interest in a specific area of work, and you can integrate that in some way with information technology. But the earlier you can do that kind of thing, the better, I guess, so that you can maybe tailor the work you do in school to those particular interests.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, you're very busy.
If any of your class has any questions they want to funnel back to me, I'll be happy to answer them, but you'll have to judge whether that makes sense or not.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye.